the format with Kapil. So what I do is I read the book and I share my personal opinions, anecdotes, or any Bitcoin gossips that I've heard or any interesting information. And everybody is free to share their inputs or just listen on. It's completely okay to just listen on and lurk. And you can use the chat. You can also ask me questions later. That's completely fine. I'll start now. That which you cannot do without. This is the closing chapter of the book. And yeah, this book's theme has been, it's very simple to understand, but I think yeah, what I have liked the most is that it's hitting at a lot of controversial subjects in Bitcoin. So even if you can't remember information, that's not the purpose. You at least, I think, can understand that Bitcoin is full of inquiries, curiosity, confrontation, a lot of debates. So there's no one person telling us how Bitcoin works. There is no one group of people telling how Bitcoin will evolve. It is a natural process that every human who is interacting with Bitcoin is taking participation in. So this book theme has been that. That's my overall summary of the book. Okay. In the closing scenes of the movie Into the Wild, the protagonist, Christopher McCandless, confronts the ultimate consequences of his quest for solitude and communion with nature, while completely isolated from society. After months of living in the wilds of Alaska in an abandoned bus, McCandless finally succumbs to the harsh realities of wilderness survival when his story tragically ends as he starves to death shortly after being poisoned by toxic plants. Lying on his deathbed in his death bus, McCandless reflects on his life and experiences. He finally realizes the importance of human connections, scrawling happiness only real when shared into his diary. The first prerequisite for any human interaction is someone to interact with. Yes, this is the basic principle of economics, that anything that we study is the study of human interactions. I think this is like a very clear line that gets drawn from psychology, that economics is not interested in what goes on inside a human being, it's interested in what goes on in the interactions between human beings. And yeah, Bitcoin is like the epitome of that. Nobody forces you to use Bitcoin. Clearly, your college senior, your parent, your best friend, maybe your best friend, maybe, I don't know, maybe your best friend is a Bitcoiner, did not tell you about Bitcoin. You found it on your own, and you have been contributing or using it or purchasing it or whatever you are doing in Bitcoin on your own. So that's human interaction, right? You came across Bitcoin because some other human talked about it, made some content around it, or yeah, you just interacted with it in some capacity. So it's because of Satoshi Nakamoto that Bitcoin is a thing, and it's because of Hal Finney that Bitcoin became more than just a one-person experiment. And yeah, long story short, a lot of people now are using Bitcoin in the world, all of them through voluntary interaction. There is a economic pressure to use Bitcoin, which is the number go up technology aspect of it. That the more you use it, the longer you use it, you are poised to be increasing your purchasing power. But still, the universal principle remains that human interaction is what makes this thing work. And yeah, this passage is summarizing how human connection, socialization is almost a need on different aspects. It could be your friends, it could be a family, it could be the group of people in your interest. So that's almost a need. I mean, sovereign individualism. This book, this paragraph, and this chapter will also talk about it. Sovereign individualism does not mean that you don't care about other humans or you don't want to make human connections. It means the ability to make decisions for your life independently. So I think more people that do that actually value human connection and appreciate it more, because you respect each other's time, you respect each other's contributions more, because no, you yourself do that, you yourself take your decisions, so you understand that other people have the power to do that. So you respect their time, you respect their contribution. Yeah. I'll continue reading now. Bitcoin changes you more than you can change it. Embracing Bitcoin is akin to adopting a more accurate world map. At any point in life, all you can play are the cards you have in your hand at that specific moment. Now, what are those cards? Well, that depends on the cards you were dealt at the start of the game, and more importantly, how well you have played your cards up to this point. The cards you have on hand at the moment represent your currently available means. The better your cards, the more plentiful the ends. Yeah. And this is very one of the very famous sayings in Bitcoin. Bitcoin changes you more than you can change it. The simplest reason for it to explain, and that this is of course an oversimplified thing in terms of understanding Bitcoin, that everybody needs to do their own research in Bitcoin. It's not some magical thing that will just change your life. But as you start to learn more, you see that it's a complex system, and you can't change a complex system. You don't need to. because you need to first understand that complex system. And Bitcoin being an economic system, a technological movement, a freedom movement, a multidisciplinary subject, and a very new paradigm shift, it requires, you talk to an older person, you realize this, that it's very difficult for them to understand Bitcoin, because on one hand you are saying that it talks about scarcity, but then you say this, it's digital. The older you get, the more difficult it gets for you to understand the idea of digital scarcity. So anybody who has come into contact with Bitcoin, I think will say this, that it changes aspects of your life. And the interesting thing that you notice about the veterans of Bitcoin is, like, the older they are into Bitcoin, they have a sense of humility about Bitcoin. They have a very deep sense of humility. If you listen to people like Peter Wool, or even Anderson Antonopoulos, or anybody who's been into Bitcoin for a long time, who is an educator or public, you will see a sense of deep humility in them that I think comes because they appreciate the complexity of Bitcoin. And yeah, also the fact that change in Bitcoin comes at a huge, expensive process and cost, and for a good reason, because it is preserving more than $2 trillion worth of network. And yeah, the second aspect of this sentence, I think this is covered. This has been covered in this book many times. Is about gratitude. I think the way I will interpret it is that all of us have reasons to complain. All of us have reasons to be gratitude. To have gratitude that I have been lucky to have a lot of abilities, to have had a good family, and to have had opportunities to work in the things that I want to work on. So this is not something we should take for granted. And the other side of the other side of the coin is that there's nothing you can do about the things you are complaining about without solution anyway. So you can complain that, hey, I wish I was born in a place which looks like this or which was doing this, but you were not. And the only thing you can do is just make peace with that realization. And for most people, it's not that difficult unless you're like in a very totalitarian regime. The ability that Bitcoin gives you is the power to save your value in the hardest money ever. So if you are living in a time where you have access to the internet, there's little to no reason for you to yeah, seriously complain about your life. You're okay. It's nothing. There's nothing wrong with expressing complaints, but most people, I think, have the opportunity to make their life better. So yeah. Or honestly, most people I meet in Bitcoin are not complaining. They are empowering themselves. They are increasing their knowledge. This has become a cultural problem, I think, where people compare themselves to others. So they have a lot of things to complain about that you might notice in your social circles. At least I do. That a lot of people have a very simple set of first world problems, but they complain a lot just because I think it's a cultural thing of just comparing ourselves to other humans. Instagram does not help with that. I have not used Instagram in years, and I will not advise anybody to do that. Yeah, and the quicker you can reach them, your means cards falls into three categories: capital, skills, and human connections. Bitcoin, as we will explore, ticks all three boxes. Yeah, and for those of you who are new to Austrian economics, or in general also economics as a subject, this book is actually pretty good in just keeping very technical subjects like capital, or yeah, money, or a lot of other technical, I mean economics wise technical subjects, but Knut does a good job of explaining it in a very human and lucid way. The first category, category capital, encompasses your physical possessions and money. Capital refers to goods and services you employ to produce more complex goods and services. So yeah, this is the technical definition of capital. It refers to goods and services that you employ to produce more complex goods and services. Your laptop, your jacket also, because it allows you to go outside and do work. And yeah, capital is encompasses your physical possessions and money. It's like what you can tangibly measure, uh, that adds to your quality of life. Capital goods include physical assets such as real estate, precious metals, stocks, and money, which can all be used to generate more capital or be traded for other goods and services. Capital structure and temporal coordination between production processes are critical for economic calculation and the efficient allocation of resources over time. Your physical possessions are precious, but their physicality makes them vulnerable to theft, socialism, and natural disasters. And yeah, again, in case you are new to economics, I think everybody just reading economics becomes almost like poetry, because the more you interact with people, the more you see that economics is everywhere. It's like the time value of money. Every day you wake up, every day you spend time, you are paying. You are literally paying with your time, and the things that you give time to will respond to it. It's like if you give time to spending more, eating junk food, or watching a lot of TikToks, or spending time with people who are not valuing you, you are paying for it in more than just time cost, because That's an opportunity cost. You could have invested the time in learning more about skills, in learning more about knowledge, in spending time with people who value you, so on and so forth. I could go on and go on. But my point is that once you have an economic lens to life, a lot of things just open up, which you realize only when you've done that and you see other people do not look at life like that. They live in a very simple way that, hey, my salary will increase, so I will do this. So that's based out of a very ignorant understanding of economics, because most people haven't spent time thinking about these subjects. So for me, and I think I've seen a lot of people say the same. Once you read more, just read more in general. I encourage people to just read more, not necessarily economics. But as you bump into Bitcoin or economics or maybe political theory, you just see that the world starts to make more sense just for the virtue of understanding and thinking about subjects like this. Capital structure and temporal coordination between production processes are critical for economic calculation and the efficient allocation of resources over time. Yep. Temporal coordination here means time. It's like how much production processes take time, what you need to allocate to that time, and what runway you need. Speaking from a very startup lens, you will see this that every startup needs a runway to create brand, to create product, to create a customer base, to create an experience which you have feedback out of, that you just use it with more people, and you start to see some patterns that this is the kind of experience people need and desire. So almost all startups in India, maybe outside as well, I've worked at startups in India. They will say this that there is needs to be some runway. You can't just create value out of thin air overnight. So as more you do it more and more, you start to see patterns, and yeah, you need some time for that runway, which is just burning a lot of energy, investment, time, cost, and then you have built that foundation to be able to use the investment or the patterns that you have understood. Yeah, and a quick point on how, because the money is broken, because we are living in a fiat monetary paradigm, you will see that startups struggle to do long term thinking. Even good willed people, even ethical people, even people who want to encourage good use of services will end up paying the cost of living in the fiat paradigm, because they need to raise funds, they need to answer their investors. It becomes difficult to do long term thinking when you have an investor reporting to do in 6 months. So that affects the entire allocation of resources, and that's one of the reasons why Bitcoin becomes so important. The second category, knowledge, is less sensitive to outside forces. Knowledge is an easy burden to carry. If your goal is optionality, investing in yourself and your skill set is a no-brainer for your brain. There's a high probability that you discovered Bitcoin because of your inquisitive mind, and Bitcoin probably led you down a path of more inquiry. Leveling up your knowledge is an excellent way of increasing your value to others and making them more valuable to you. Yeah, I think this strikes the most in education and Bitcoin open source. My experience with it, from the limited experience I've had with it so far, is that just being helpful, and you see that other people naturally want to be helpful to you, and it's a very interesting experience. You don't find that even in school and college, because I think even school and college somehow encourage you to not be helpful, just think about your own excellence. But working in open source teaches you collaboration more than just thinking about yeah, just thinking about numbers or thinking about how you personally only can excel. The value of other people brings us to the third category of life cards, your network. The people you know and your relationships with them obviously have a significant impact on your life. One could even go so far as to say they are your life. At the very least, other people are crucial to your long term survival. Even the most stubborn defenders of uncompromising individualism, such as the authors of this book, have to admit that human beings are flock animals. Surrounding yourself with the right people is paramount to accomplishing a successful life, no matter how you happen to define success. If you have a day job, your employer and colleagues play a huge role there. If you're an entrepreneur, your customers and clients do. Either way, your reputation and the people you interact with will seriously affect your life. It's, I hope, pretty self-explanatory. Everybody has experienced this. That reputation itself can also be looked at as a capital. The more good work, the more people associate good work with you. The more people associate good work with you, more new people want to interact with you or associate you with good work, and it just scales without you even sometimes realizing. Bitcoin is all three types of cards at one. Uh, it is clearly capital, as you can use it as a medium of exchange and unit of account through time and space. It is also knowledge, as proper Bitcoin usage requires at some level of expertise, at least some level of expertise in multiple fields. Bitcoin indirectly forces you to level up your skills with computers, computer networks, mathematics, and economics, as insufficient proficiency in these areas has the potential to become very costly. Finally, as we have explored, you are your Satoshis, and so is everyone else who owns some. Exchanging or accepting Satoshis for goods and services requires you to interact with at least this part of the person you're trading with, the pseudonymous part. Yeah. More than I think multidisciplinary aspect of Bitcoin, it is the being the weird ostrich that I think is the is the unique trait of being a Bitcoiner, or it's the intelligence cost because other people around you do not think the way you think, or they do not appreciate your inquisitivity about a lot of complex subjects. So just having the ability to think outside the box or think on your own or think without even requiring social validation all the time, I think highlights how yeah, Bitcoin is knowledge. It requires you to be somebody who is thirsty for knowledge. Uh, yeah, and exchanging Satoshis, I think it's also one of those interesting experiences. I've had a lot of conversations with people just on events when people ask, uh, "How do I start with Bitcoin?" So I just say, just make a quick wallet download and accept some sats. It's as easy as UPI, so it does not take much expertise. But just that experience that it is easy or it might be new, but it's not challenging. I think breaks a lot of barriers for people to now look more into Bitcoin. Yeah. And yeah, when you do that, you naturally interact with the Bitcoiner because he has Bitcoin to spend. So once you do that, you at least interact with somebody who understands Bitcoin and a lot of things that come with it. So that's like your entry point into yeah, something which is new but very human. It's not alien. It's just new. You cannot own Bitcoin in the traditional sense of owning stuff. No matter what governments, courts, chain, people, or anyone else tells you, there is no way to prove that someone does not know a stream of information such as a private key. From this perspective, Satoshis are never transferred but merely reorganized on the time chain for communication purposes. Yeah, in the following passages, we will see that what does this mean that you cannot own Bitcoin in the traditional sense of stuff, and yeah, there is no way that someone does not know a string of information such as private key. It's very difficult. Yeah, this following passages will make this clear more, but it's very difficult to prove that you do not own Bitcoin, uh, let alone that you own Bitcoin. It's like, why would you want to do that? But uh, there have been people and cases where they have been put under the radar to prove their innocence. Yeah, this comes on the day that Ross Ulbricht has been set free by pardon, uh, yes, in the US. Yeah, which itself is a monumental thing in Bitcoin. I have not gone too deep into the Silk case, but I know that it was a very harsh statement on one individual, and there are a lot of intricacies to that story. But I think the overall of that is Ross Ulbricht was a champion of Bitcoin and personal freedoms, and there was a lot of resistance uh, from the Bitcoin community for his sentence, and it was quickly carried out. And yeah, thanks to Donald Trump, he is now free. Yep, I'll take just a one 10-15 seconds pause in case somebody has anything to share. I'll check the chat. Kapil gave away 6 sixes and 6 balls. Best batsman to Bitcoiner. I don't know if you guys are playing cricket right now. Yeah, for those of you who do not know, Tushar introduced me to Kapil. He wanted to learn more about Bitcoin. I am a cricket fan, so that was like uh, one interest that we shared. And yeah, I was always a test cricket fan, so I always, if I was always not a Bitcoiner, I was at least appreciated subtle things in life, or at least the long time preference things, because test matches and watching them and appreciating them takes a sense of uh, patience, or I would rather say subtlety. So yeah, for me, T20 cricket was fun, but was never as interesting, and IPL did not help. So yeah, I think it's like IPL generation. It's a common metaphor used in India. We are living in an IPL generation. It becomes very difficult to tell them about long-term value of things, let alone Bitcoin, let alone something a little complex like Bitcoin. But yeah, I think actually a lot of Gen Z people are actually better poised to understand Bitcoin just because they have less baggage of yeah, working in traditional offices. Yeah, so on one hand, I've seen that they are not as receptive because of low attention time, and I also now have very low attention span. But on the other hand, because they don't have baggages, they are more open to learning about Bitcoin. Okay, I'll continue reading now. To put another way, the 12 magic words do not belong to They are just 12 words. At its core, the private key that unlocks an unspent transaction, Bitcoin transaction output, UTXO, is nothing but a string of ones and zeros. The implications of the Satoshis residing within our minds are way more significant than any living politician can comprehend. Bitcoin has made it blatantly apparent that money was never anything but information. But what this means is yet to be fully understood. Yeah. Yeah. Just one of those when you are new to Bitcoin, you just trip on it so much that Satoshis are just numbers on the ledger of Bitcoin, and they are reorganized as this paragraph somewhere before put it. And they are reorganized, but just a combination of zeros and ones, which are private keys and digital signatures. And it's just messages on the internet. There's nothing fancy going on in Bitcoin. It's just messages being processed by nodes, and they are using elliptic curve cryptography. That's like technical aspect of it, but essentially they are just calculators doing mathematics. And once you talk more about this aspect of Bitcoin with a lot of people who put up a lot of resistance, I use this as an example that it's literally this very similar to sending a message on WhatsApp. So tomorrow, if you tell me that, hey, we should monitor all WhatsApp chats in the world, then I might listen to you that we should regulate Bitcoin and we should monitor all Bitcoin transactions. I've had this conversation with my cousin recently, so that worked with him. It's like he at least saw the weirdness of how somehow it's normal for him to expect that WhatsApp messages should not be surveilled or scanned or regulated or controlled, but Bitcoin should be controlled just because it's money. But it is essentially information. It is technically also just information, and it has made apparent. Yeah, if you are like a gold bug, that money is nothing but information. The gold itself is not money. It is the value that we ascribe to the gold that makes it have properties of money. It has been the best money because it is difficult to produce for a very good reason. But the thing that makes it money is not it being scarce. It is that humans value it and use it for store of value, medium of exchange. And yeah, paper money has value because we use it. It does not have value just because somebody says it has value. Okay, I'll continue reading again. We're about halfway into the session. I might speed up a little and I'll just give a quick summary of the passages. Any government ban on self-hosted or non-custodial Bitcoin wallets should be as absurd as a ban on using your. Such a ban would have severe consequences. It would deny you the right to keep a secret while granting the government the right to claim that you do, and transform everyone from a potential criminal to an actual one. If you cannot prove that you're unaware of the numbers 1 and 0 when such a ban is in place, a court could rule out that you could never rule out that you could own all the bitcoins. You would have to prove that you don't know something, which is impossible. You would be guilty until proven innocent, which would be something you could never possibly prove. Any law that stops or restricts Bitcoin usage is nothing less than a crime against humanity, and we should all treat it as such. Yes, this just does a better job of what I was saying. That there's no such thing as self-hosted or non-custodial Bitcoin wallets. It's just software, right? All of it is software. You either produce your own private key, you store it on your terms, or you store it with a third party. Regardless, it's just software. So any restriction on the use of Bitcoin is literally somebody telling you that don't math or don't send messages without our permission. So yeah, if you're using WhatsApp, if you're using the internet for messages, for listening to song, and you think that nobody should tell you that which songs should be banned, which songs, and who gets to say that, it becomes a very difficult conversation that who gets to tell us that which song should be banned. Then if you think on those lines, you are not allowed to say that Bitcoin needs to be regulated because it is also information. And I'm willing to have more conversations about this because I've seen a lot of resistance by people saying that it's also money, so you can't just say that it's information. But money is information. This is the radical claim. There's a high likelihood that we'll see more court cases involving Bitcoiners in many jurisdictions in the future. The precedents set by these courts will largely determine how difficult life as a Bitcoiner will be during the transition to hyper Bitcoinization. For those not super keen on buying a one-way ticket to El Salvador, these fights are worth taking on. They are good hills to die on. Orange pill your local lawmen and politicians as soon as you can. Yeah, those of you who have met Harish, he was at the halving event. He's generally somebody who's always meeting more Bitcoiners. He's one of the reasons that currently in India it's easy to or not as difficult to operate as a business, as a Bitcoin business. And overall, you will just realize that the number of people he has influenced just out of that lawsuit in 2018 because of a RBI circular, and the resistance that he and a lot of people would have put in, but he was one of the key stakeholders, was the reason that a lot of people became confident about talking about Bitcoin. Even though in India it's not a huge number, a lot of people are able to confidently talk about Bitcoin, work in Bitcoin, accept Bitcoin, because it is not illegal. Because some people made it clear that they will put the time, energy, and cost to um yeah to take on this fight. You may think that laws prohibiting the use of numbers are absurd to ever come into practice, but the concept of illegal numbers already exists. An illegal number refers to a specific number subject to legal restrictions, making its possession, distribution, or use illegal. Illegal numbers represent data that infringes on digital copyright, contains encryption keys, or comprises other sensitive information that authorities deem restricted. The concept of illegal numbers rose to prominence during the DECSS numbers case in the early 2000s. The case centered around the distribution of a small piece of code called DECSS, which could decrypt the copy in protection content Scrabble systems on DVDs. The case gained widespread attention when cypherpunks repeatedly published the DECSS code as a series of prime numbers on Dig, a popular social media site. Arguing that numbers themselves couldn't be copyrighted, prime number activists also posted a picture called the free speech flag, a hexadecimal color representation of the said encryption key in defiance of censorship efforts. Yeah, again, just relating it back to Bitcoin, the idea of self-custodial, non-custodial wallets and restrictions to them. Say if you're using that term for a technical conversation, it's a different thing. But if you're using that term called self-hosted or self-custodial, non-custodial wallets to create some legal systems around it, then it's a slippery slope because you're essentially just saying some type of software or some type of numbers are illegal. Some types of softwares or numbers need to be looked at differently. If you're using a private key, you are literally just using zeros and ones. So some combination of zero and ones becomes illegal is a very dangerous territory, or it's inviting uh, lot of unrequired hassle and regulations. The notion of illegal numbers is just as weird as it sounds, but laws that could jail you for attempting certain jurisdictions do in fact exist. In examining how such extreme laws come into being, we must go back to reasoning from first principles and remember the difference between legal and lawful. From a first principles property rights maximalist perspective, copyright laws are all bullshit because the concept of intellectual property makes no sense. Yeah, yeah. I briefly worked at intellectual property. My work was just in writing contracts and reviewing documents and doing research and case study. So I was not at the cutting edge of intellectual property, but I know that it's a messy thing. It's a really messy thing, and there's like political propaganda and lobbying of of holding certain softwares products which could be benefiting from innovation, but certain companies lobby using a lot of money to get softwares licensed, and then they don't allow a review, which affects innovation, which affects competition. So it becomes a thing of abuse more than thing of protection, which is what is meant by saying that it does not make sense because it's information. It can be copied, it can be used by someone else. Trademark is an interesting thing, I think, because trademark literally means reputation. You can, I think we have discussed this in the sessions previously as well, that this book discusses reputation as capital. Reputation is definitely capital, no doubt about that, because it's like every time you eat golgappa or any snack at the brand that you like, you are trusting that logo, you are trusting that name. So trademark or reputation are very similar. Trademark laws are sometimes misused by big corporations against small uh, companies. And it's true the other way around as well. A lot of the small businesses try to use the reputation of the big brands. So I think reputation itself can't be patented, right? You can't say that, hey, because I am this, then I need my name or my brand needs to be protected, because people are going to find ways to talk about it in creative ways, and if they want to defame you, they will defame you. If they want to speak good things about you, they will speak good things about you. But yeah, I am not an expert on intellectual property laws, but yeah, as a bitcoiner, I think I don't like it. That's my opinion as of now, at least. Property, defined as the exclusive right to use, control, or dispose of tangible or intangible assets, is fundamentally about the relationship between an individual and an item. The concept of property should serve as a bridge between subjective valuations and objective reality, not the relationship between people and information. Sadly, this is hardly the case anywhere. Yeah. Yeah, we have discussed this in the previous sessions. I'll just quickly summarize about how property laws are a precedent to free speech. It does not matter what you say unless you also exercise rights over the property that you own. Because then you have the right to say, hey, you might not like what I'm saying, but I will say this because this is my property and I get to say what I want to say on my property. And you can shut the door. You can say that, hey, this is my house, so I get to live according to me. Property rights is like a necessary building block, and only then can we talk about freedom of speech. Yeah, it is defined as the exclusive right to use, control, or dispose of tangible or intangible assets. Intangible assets is like promissory notes. It's like stocks, the receipt that you own of a stock. That's an intangible asset. Yeah, it could also be your reputation. That's like an intangible asset that you have, and you have the right to exercise it. Applied to scarce resources, reduced property rights reduce conflict over physical goods. Intellectual property, however, involves scarce and non-rivalrous. Unlike physical property, ideas can be shared and used by all people simultaneously without depletion. Yes, so once you have a good idea or good information, and if you think you want to guard it, it is a personal responsibility problem, not a legal problem, because information is replicable. So once the information is out, you have no way of knowing if that information can be used, how it will be used. So it's a matter of privacy more than intellectual property laws. And yeah, it involves ideas and information. So it becomes very difficult to even dispute them because once the information is out, you can't trace it back. You can't hold it back. The cat is out of the bag. You have uttered the sound. You can't just vacuum the sound back into your mouth. Yeah, and ideas can be shared and used by all people simultaneously. And there's good reasons to use ideas in public because they get better, but with more feedback, with more people, with more review. Thus, enforcing exclusive rights over ideas contradicts the natural characteristics of information knowledge as infinitely replicable. Exclusive rights is what intellectual property is about. It's about ensuring exclusive rights over brands, over reputation, over software, over products, over innovations, over techniques. So when you do that, you invite a lot of restriction or disputes. It creates a huge market of infrastructure of intellectual property laws and lawyers and accountants and industries and disputes. It does not get humanity ahead. Intellectual property laws interfere with price signals and other mechanisms of the free market and makes it more challenging to allocate resources efficiently, which distorts the market's ability to determine the most valued of physical resources. By granting exclusive rights to creators and patent owners, intellectual property laws inhibit others from improving upon or competing with the protected ideas, slowing innovation. To put it bluntly, intellectual property laws literally retard the entire market. I'll give a quick, simple example in case, for me, sometimes this subject can become too abstract. I'll give a quick example. It's like if you go to a good dosa shop, and yeah, just because this is getting recorded, dosa is a South Indian recipe. I'm pretty sure everybody is an Indian, so you know what dosa is. But if you're like a good dosa maker and you think you have found a very special recipe that you don't want your competitor to know, it's your responsibility that you do not tell them or you are master it in such a way that nobody's able to reverse engineer it. But once somebody sees you cooking in the kitchen with that recipe and they essentially just steal that recipe, you can't do something about it on a very human level. What can you do? It's like they saw you, it was your responsibility to shut the door or shut the window. They saw you, you can't blame them for you being careless about your recipe. So same applies to everything else. Same applies to your software. If you write good software, somebody steals it. It's software. It's zeros and ones. So they did it. So it was your responsibility to either not share it, and if you share it, it's going to be used because it's replicable. It's very cheap to reproduce. And as open source ecosystems have and software have shown that it's much better to use open source softwares. Sometimes maybe not. It's a much more complex debate that open source systems are difficult to manage and incentivize people to work on. But more cases than not, we have seen that open source encourages competition and incentivizes uh, inventions and collaboration. Even if you do believe in copyright laws and things like, you'll have to admit that a law requiring a person to they don't know a particular number is absurd. But this is what a ban on owning Bitcoin would have to be. Such laws are already in place, such as the Digital Copyright Act, which you have no doubt come across when searching the web to obtain movies or music. When contemplating the implications of this sort of a thing, a specific question inevitably arises: how unjust of a society am I willing to live in? What are you willing to put up with, and what would be the consequence? What would the consequences be if you didn't? Yeah, this is a recent update. So this book was written before Trump was even in conversation about Bitcoin. I'm pretty sure. I might be wrong on the detail or this fact that this book was written when Donald Trump had nothing to do with Bitcoin Strategic Reserve, freeing Ross Ulbricht, launching a Trump coin. Uh, but yeah, having said the, I mean, having seen the last few days and the weeks, we have seen that more likely than seeing Bitcoin getting banned, we are more likely to see a lot of shitcoining, a lot of cryptocurrencies being launched because now the president of the biggest superpower on the planet is doing that. So yeah, we are living in a different time. I don't think we are living in as much, at least. I mean, of course, we have terrible laws. We have a lot of work to do in terms of awareness of the average person. But more than unjust laws, we are living in very culturally comic times. We are living in very comical times that there's so much blatant clown world behavior. For example, the Donald Trump coin or the Melania Trump coin, and the people buying it and just it raising $70 billion in less than 12 hours. It's just crazy. I mean, I'm not even sure of some of the numbers. I'm just shooting them randomly. I've just heard them around in conversations. But the fact that this is happening, and some people are predicting that the next 4 years are going to be golden age of fraud. Donald Trump just using this tenor to just make a lot of money, make a lot of fool out of a lot of people. There's some good news that he's freed Ross, but yeah, we are living in culturally funny times more than tyrannical legal times. Disobeying the law. I'll just take a quick pause here. Let's check the chat as well. Chat. Yeah. Quick pause in case somebody has anything to share. It could be outside of the specific text as well. Needs to be related to Bitcoin. But yeah, you can share anything. We are about 10% left of the book. I think I might have to ask you to stay for 5 or 10 minutes extra. I apologize. Try my best to complete it around 9:95. Disobeying the law can have severe consequences, but blind obedience is even worse. We are facing a societal paradigm shift of immense proportions, where our perseverance in the present will determine the fate of our children's future. Are you willing to stand on your ground and fight for your freedoms, or will you choose the convenience of being mere voting cattle? Are you willing to bite the hand that allegedly feeds you? This is a popular metaphor which says that because people are becoming so dependent on the state, on money printing, that it becomes very difficult for them to question the idea of money printing, which makes sense on a very human level. But yeah, great times require great decisions and huge responsibility. So yeah, we are facing a social paradigm change for sure. We are seeing this. We are seeing this true every 6 months. I think Bitcoin is like a very accelerated uh, revolution, or we are living through some of the crazier times, and every 6 months, every 1 year, even the narratives, even the conversations, the debates, the kind of people, everything changes. And I think it's not going to slow down. I think every 1 year, 2 year, we will have to come back and just see how things have changed, because this is how it's evolving. Most of us don't want to be martyrs. We are content as long as we have a roof over our heads and 3 daily meals to look forward to. But being content is what enables the zookeepers to keep you caged. Where is your line in the sand? How many freedoms are you willing to toss on the altar of comfort? How slippery is the slope to totalitarianism? These are questions that every individual should think of their own for sure. This is not something that myself can share over this session, or you can't rely on great people to just tell you answers to these questions, or read some books and just get the answers. This is a very deep personal question. I think everybody should spend time on their own, understand the importance of the subjects, because it's a very individual thing. It has a cultural and social element to it, but that is a consequence of a lot of individuals valuing these questions. Since Bitcoin is all about truth and no authority figure can tell you what Bitcoin should mean to you, reputational capital is arguably more critical among Bitcoiners than in any other community. No other community is so relentless when calling out dishonest or immoral behavior. The unforgiving, uncompromising nature of the so called toxic Marxies is a feature rather than a bug and an essential part of Bitcoin's immune system. Ultimately, we all become more robust because of the refusal to blindly follow self proclaimed leaders. Bitcoin erases the boundary between property rights and free speech. It illuminates that the two are inseparable, as there's no difference between knowledge and ownership in Bitcoin. The right to freely express oneself has to play second fiddle to property rights. as infringements of the latter are impossible without wing clipping the former. Yep. Put another way, the freedom of speech without property rights is little more than the right to open complain when one's possessions are being legally expropriated. Actions speak louder than words, and the fact that some people voluntarily move from freedom of speech oriented Western democracies to property rights upholding monarchies, such as Dubai and Thailand, reveals what they value the most. Yes. Yeah. Like I've been stressing, and this book has been stressing it, property rights are the prerequisite to peace because you can complain all you want, but if something's happening legally, it does not matter because that's the law of the land. And it's being seen more and more by, I'll just read this quickly again. Actions speak louder than words, and the fact that some people voluntarily move from freedom of speech oriented Western democracies to property rights upholding monarchies, such as Dubai and Thailand, reveal what they value the most. Expressing yourself through action reveals the real you. Without the unadulterated ability to do so, you have no choice but to live your life as something other than your honest self. Since taxes and inflation are everywhere, it is fair to say self is not affordable for almost any human being living today. Not even the super rich can be true to themselves, as they are not immune to the personality changes that come with the ever decreasing purchasing power of society's primary exchange medium. Deceitful thieves thrive in societies built from a base layer of theft and deceit. It's like the entire, the entire economy or the entire human cultural system was a human, it is inverted. It is like he's hanging by his feet, and it's very difficult for him to, yeah, get up, become straight, and yeah, this is how difficult it becomes to make Bitcoin appreciable to a lot of people because they don't see the problem because the problem is so deep, but the problem is everywhere, so it becomes almost invisible. But it is not invisible; it is present reality. Deceitful thieves thrive in societies built from a base layer of theft and deceit. A monetary base layer built on absolute truth would create the opposite scenario. A world so much better that the human mind can't comprehend what it would look like. The fiat mind can't understand deflation as a positive. If you still think about Bitcoin purchasing power in fiat terms, you're missing the point. The dollar is nearly useless as a measuring subjective value statements, and measuring the price of a Bitcoin in dollar terms furthers the confusion inherent in the oppressive legacy system we are trying to escape. Not only does the dollar lose value over time, but its inflation warps the market's ability to reduce all prices to their marginal cost of production. Not only does the dollar lose value over time, but its inflation warps the market's ability to reduce all prices to their marginal cost of production. The Cantillon effect and the resource misallocation that inevitably flows from it distort the market signal, making cheap things expensive and expensive things cheap. Yep. One example of Cantillon effect overpricing is the infamous Maurizio Catalan first displayed at Art Basel in Miami Beach in 2019. The piece, consisting of a single banana duct taped to a wall, sold for an astonishing $120,000 in true form. The buyer did not even require the physical banana but an art certificate proving ownership. The owner was instructed to replace the banana when it eventually decayed, and doing so would ensure the piece would still be considered an authentic Catalan artwork. Only in a world where money is cheaper to produce than everything else do prices go bananas to the point where banana art certificates become more worthy or more worth more than the bananas themselves. I'm sure you must have seen that picture of banana duct tape art piece, which is you don't need to see it. If you're not seen it, you are lucky. And you might have come across this idea. I've seen a couple of videos on this of how art galleries is like a scam to just avoid taxes for a lot of rich folks, and it's just money floating between a group of families, and this is how they justify the huge high prices because they can show it as an asset sale event. Once they do that, have to report less tax. The reason that they are doing this is because the base layer of money is not working, so they are forced to get into these fancy abstract theories of just moving money or financing art, or I don't know, it's different concepts, but essentially the same idea of manipulating value. Unfortunately, easily duplicatable nonsense posing as art has also become a thing in Bitcoin. As Bitcoin matures and adoption proliferates, straight up shitcoin scams become more challenging to pull off. pull off. Therefore, scammers have been forced to reinvent themselves, and one such reinvention is the introduction of ordinal theory in early 2023. A cunning group of charlatans semi-successfully fooled no coiners, crypto people, and other misguided newbies into believing that satoshis can be arranged ordinally and therefore considered rare. Since the satoshi is nothing but a measuring unit, the notion of a rare satoshi is as absurd as a rare centimeter. Still, these people somehow manage to sell pictures of monkeys and various transaction data with arbitrary nonsense, while claiming that doing so proves something about the data. The Satoshi is valuable because it is scarce and lives in your head, which cannot be said about any other data on the time chain. Buying a token or a picture on the time chain is even more absurd than buying an I have the right to duct tape a banana to the wall and call it art certificate, since it's more akin to purchasing a star in the Andromeda galaxy. It's there, sure, but you can't do anything with it, and everyone else can see it just as much as you can. The difference is that these ordinals, inscriptions, and runes are not in another galaxy, but involuntarily stored on people's note right here on Earth. Yeah, if you have not followed the controversy, you can, but the long story short is it's a lot of noise on top of Bitcoin, which has come because of a lot of noise. The ability of regular people to run nodes is crucial for Bitcoin survival. Every self-reflecting Bitcoiner should prioritize doing their part, keeping the time chain as devoid of unnecessary nonsense as possible. Whether you do this by running a node, mining with a transparent pool, or educating people about what makes Bitcoin unique, doesn't matter. Make no mistake, all spam on the time chain makes humanity's best attempt at global fair money worse for everyone forever. And not fighting it is enabling it. Putting spam on the time chain is nothing less than an attack on humanity. And anyone engaged in it is either a moron or sociopath. Bitcoin is robust not only to the extent that its participants are willing to take responsibility for their actions, Sorry, Bitcoin is robust, but only to the extent that its participants are willing to take responsibility for their actions. Ironically, the same dynamic is true for freedom in general. You can't have it unless you're willing to take responsibility for your life. Taking responsibility for your life means realizing what life cards you have on hand and starting to play them to the best of your ability. So, what is the goal of the game? Well, that's entirely up to you, regardless of your game. If you play your cards correctly in each moment, you'll have a better hand to play in the future. Bitcoin is like the Joker card. You can exchange the Joker for any other card at any point, and the further into the game you are, the more powerful this ability becomes. As long as the world around you stays relatively stable, acquiring a better hand of cards is easy. Just avoid spending your satoshis. The real test of your resolve comes the day patience is no longer an option. Whenever the and then they fight you phase actually begins, you must choose which side of history you're on. And there are only two options: Bitcoin maximalist or the nationalist or socialist side. There is no second best ideology. Thankfully, this has been pushed back at least for a few years because, at least in my view, shitcoining is going to be the thing, at least for a few months, if not the next 1 or 2 years. Ask yourself, would you prefer a pro Bitcoin or an anti Bitcoin political leader in your country? The answer may be say seems simple, but this question has more depth than you might think. A pro Bitcoin leader would make life easy for Bitcoiners who might become complacent as a result. In such a scenario, people could forget the importance of running a node, the not your keys, not your coins mentality, and many other core Bitcoin principles. Remember that a politician can never give you a right, only take it away. On the flip side, using Bitcoin properly, privately, and securely is the only option people have in a country with an anti Bitcoin leader. So, which one is preferable? The best scenario of them all would be if no human claimed the right to rule another altogether. But it seems unlikely that anyone alive today will have a chance to experience such a world. Only by using Bitcoin privately and securely do you have the option to live your life as if politicians did not have any power over you. Since if you do, they don't. Yeah, since if you do use it privately and securely, nobody has the power to get in your way. It's all noise. You're better off without it. Material cravings, power, attention, political or religious allegiances, beliefs in the supernatural or the science. Rid yourself of it all. Only then can you be truly free. Reclaim the driver's seat of your life. Anything less is serfdom. That which you cannot do without, you own. Okay, sorry, we have another chapter. I thought this was the last chapter. Just quickly glide. It has 7 pages. I'll have to ask you guys to spend 5 minutes extra. I'll read this and I'll summarize the last paragraph. I have not read this chapter before, thought that was the last chapter. Excels, Excelsior. Time is money and money is time. We wasted every second dime on diets, lawyers, shrinks, and apps, and flags and plastic surgery. So long and thanks for all the fish. Clown world is a byproduct of people acting childish and not taking responsibility of their lives. Taking responsibility is what being an adult is all about. As children, we instinctively know that the bully threatening other kids at the playground is a bad actor. Still, we acquiesce to his demands and hand over our toys if he scares us enough. But we know deep inside that what he's doing is wrong and that his actions make recess miserable for everyone. As we grow up, we tend to forget that the same "I'm going to take your stuff or else" mentality is everywhere. After all, the school itself was probably paid for with lunch money stolen from your parents. It is hard to see the extent of the long term damage of letting the bullies win. Preventing bullies from winning requires each individual to take responsibility of their life and actions. Shouting at the system to fix itself and give out more free lunches accomplishes nothing. On the contrary, raging against the machine actually strengthens it. As the eponymous rap metal band so blatantly exemplifies, fuck you, audience, I will do what they tell me. The only alternative to obedience is responsibility, the flip side of the freedom coin. Eventually, the journey toward taking responsibility will demand that you dissect and comprehend all the implications of succumbing to a veiled threats of violence. The not too obvious, hidden in plain sight tool for analyzing violence is the price signal. The enduring principle that prices in a free market gravitate toward the market is as relevant as ever. In an ideally competitive market, one utterly devoid of forceful interventions, the selling price for a product or service will eventually align with the cost of producing one additional unit. Technological progress rapidly accelerates this trend. Automation, digitalization, and advancements in logistics and manufacturing technologies would allow businesses to produce all goods and services at an ever decreasing cost per unit. Theoretically, this efficiency gain translates into lower consumer prices, facilitating an even more competitive market environment. Moreover, technology opens up access to markets, breaking down the barriers to entry that once protected established firms from new competitors. Conclusion: everything ought to be cheaper, more awesome, and more abundant everywhere indefinitely. With increasing downward price pressures, how do we explain why most consumer prices rise? Let's revisit Clown World for a moment. I'll just read this question again. With increasing downward price pressures, how do we explain why most consumer prices rise? Let's revisit Clown World for a moment. Yeah, so I hope that question was clear that in a free market, the natural understanding that things will get better and cheaper uh, holds true, but we are not living in a free market. That's the biggest reason that the consumer prices rise. And how do we explain this to the clown world? Market interventions in general and government regulations in particular hinder technological deflation's ability to improve everyone's life. By complicating the entrepreneur's life, they stifle innovation. Entrepreneurs, for the most part, comply with regulations voluntarily, but not necessarily with consent. Therefore, regulations not only increase costs to the population, but also concentrate control. In short, the bureaucracy is expanding to meet the needs of the expanding bureaucracy, leading to higher barriers to entry, artificial monopolies, and ultimately clown world galore. In clown world, large corporations lobby for regulatory barriers to protect their interests. This is, of course, a losing battle tactic against the inexorable trend of falling prices. From a business dilemma perspective, these corporations are defectors, not cooperators. They do not follow the tit for tat strategy, but why? Cooperators eventually outcompete defectors, don't they? Yes, this would be true if the system actually worked, but the money is broken. In a world where inflation is everywhere, everyone's incentivized to shorten their time horizons and grab as much for themselves as possible before the money loses its value. Clown world results in tits for tate rather than tit for tat. Yeah, just a summary of why the financial system is designed to lose value. So it's not as violent as it is mechanical to lose value. It is a very mechanical system. It operates without violence, honestly. It's just operating because most people are not realizing that this is how it's working. More people understand the problem, more people understand the problem of inflation, how it happens, what causes it, the concept of money, the concept of money printing, concept of central banking. More people are geared to understand Bitcoin better, Bitcoin is a very simple value proposition of a decentralized peer-to-peer electronic cash system. So once you do that, you realize the power of a fixed supply money and the consequences that follow from that. The cost of producing a line of code is virtually nil. In this brave new world, the marginal cost of all digital products and services trends towards, yes, you guessed it, the marginal cost of an additional unit. What's the marginal cost of an extra line of code? That's right, zero. Unhampered, the friendly forces of a genuinely free market in the internet age will usher in an era of unparalleled abundance for everyone at breakneck speed. In the real peer-to-peer Bitcoin economy, entirely outside the banking system, there are no market interventions to distort the money. When a currency's value diminishes, holding money becomes less attractive for individuals and investors, prompting them to use assets as a store of value rather than cash. As consumer prices increase, each currency unit buys fewer goods and services, which is particularly detrimental to the poor, but also to savers and fixed income earners, as the purchasing power of their stored wealth and future income decline over time. Inflation is wage deflation, the flip side of the same deteriorating coin. On the other hand, a steady Bitcoin income becomes more valuable over time, not less. In Bitcoin, the first million is the easiest, not the hardest. A bank balance on a computer screen is as sensitive to corrosion as a copper coin in nitric acid. Real estate stocks and precious metals have thus replaced the malfunctioning government issued currencies as media of exchange. Over time, neither real estate stocks or precious metals are finite. Finite though, the only thing making them suitable as store of value is their relative scarcity compared to the lack thereof in fiat currencies. Increased asset accumulation diverts resources from productive economic activities, inevitably leading to bubbles in asset markets and increased financial instability. The irony is that individual efforts to safeguard personal wealth, such as investing in seemingly stable assets, reinforce the system and thus counterproductive. Individual efforts to safeguard personal wealth, such as investing in seemingly stable assets, reinforce the system. So the system wants you to put more money in real estate and stocks because they want the system to be able to track how much of it you own or um, yeah, create incentive for you to use the devaluing currency because you are valuing those assets in that currency. The base layer is corrupt and the base layer is forcing you to measure value in that base layer by making incentivizing you to buy these quote unquote stable assets. The results are bifurcated. Those with disposable income can take on debt and purchase assets that increase in value and protect against inflation. Those who don't have assets or disposable income effectively pay for this increase, since the only reason assets go up in price is that the purchasing power of banknotes diminishes. All the while, everyone has to pay for stuff just to survive, regardless of increasing prices or anyone's decreasing ability to pay for said stuff. Inflation thus channels wealth from the have nots to the haves at an ever accelerating pace. And the only handbrake available to reverse the process is absolutely finite money. Denominated in real money, Bitcoin, it is easy to see that 99.9% of all assets fall in price over time. A house is first and foremost a consumer good, a thing to live in. Most stocks are overvalued since most companies are zombie companies. No precious metal is as finite as element zero. Every person living today has experienced nothing but inflationary currencies. The last tie between the dollar and gold was abandoned over 50 years ago, and most people think increasing prices is a natural phenomenon they can do little about. If they only knew what a simple switch to an incorruptible denominator would do to improve their lives. Only through Bitcoin can we genuinely measure the economic shift of prices trending towards marginal cost production costs and experience the tit for tat approach as the winning strategy in the game of life. If Bitcoin remains decentralized and secure, all prices across the economy will inevitably decline. The age of abundance would then be upon us. In a world where value creation is the primary driver of activity, government interventions become increasingly obsolete. The role of venture capitalists capital also changes dramatically as investors are forced to continuous innovation and collaborate, lobbying and manipulation tactics, as is the case under fiat-based system. Under a Bitcoin-based economy, power and wealth distribution will be fairer because it will be based on merit, sorry, not political connections. The value one provides society because the primary becomes the primary means of earning money, resulting in a continual decrease in marginal cost of production, which will give rise to more cooperative, abundant, less wasteful, and just world. Yeah, we We are into 96%. We have like one, two, three, 4 pages. Yeah. So please be a little patient. And yeah, I'll get through the end and we'll have a short discussion and end this session. Bitcoiners find themselves in a unique position where mutual support is encouraged and incentivized as all Bitcoiners want Bitcoin to succeed. As the value of Bitcoin increases, so do the bags of the hodlers, creating a natural inclination among Bitcoiners to be excellent to each other and collaborate as much as possible. It's a synergy where personal gains align with collective benefit. The success of Bitcoin is the success of Bitcoiners. They are literally two sides of the same coin. If we were all Bitcoiners, we would all be successful. Funnily enough, the benefits of a Bitcoin based economy are not limited to the Bitcoin sphere. As productivity increases and both producer and consumer prices fall, even those without any Satoshis are better off because everything is interconnected. There is no such thing as a circular economy. Even the most stubborn no coiner stands to gain from the hyper Bitcoinization process. You're welcome, Mr. Schiff. A sound money standard naturally encourages a low time preference. Such a mindset shift focus from rampant consumerism to quality over quantity thinking. Given a low enough time preference, you eventually figure out that you're playing prisoner's dilemma type games an indefinite number of times. You have all the reasons in the world to cooperate with everyone to punish bad actors justly. In Clown World, where the rules are changed after each game, the long and winding road to success follows obedience, taking on excessive debt, parroting virtue signaling mainstream narratives. In Bitcoin, tit for tat is the winning strategy. Personal hyper-Bitcoinization also introduces a paradigm shift in the concept of competition. Since all owning Bitcoin requires is the ability to keep a secret, the Satoshis literally reside within the owner's brains, making theft, coercion, and violence aimed at Bitcoiners way less profitable. If you kill a Bitcoiner, you kill their Bitcoins too. Shifting incentives will push people toward more positive sum catalactic competition and away from fang and claw biological competition, where the most aggressive competitor usually wins. In a free market, catalactic competition favors whoever can provide their fellow humans with the best, most price-worthy goods and services, ultimately benefiting all participants. Yeah, earlier in this book, we defined what catalactic and fang and claw biological competition is. Fang and claw is just jungle law. Catalactic is more synergetic competition. It's where the only way to win is to produce better outcomes. Bitcoin offers a beacon of hope, illuminating a path to reverse the process of wealth funneling via inflation. Awareness is the first step towards this financial exodus. Once you recognize the fundamental issues plaguing the traditional monetary system, you can voluntarily opt out and transition to the new system. All it requires to start in Bitcoin is to just download one piece of software. Bitcoin offers an inversion of this current centrally planned, controlled economic structure, the inverse of cloud world. In Bitcoin, the wealth created by ever increasing concentrated in the few bureaucrats. Everyone on earth is better off because of an alternative financial system exists, but only those who consciously decide to adopt it to its full extent will enjoy its more profound philosophical benefits. By shifting your focus and resources to anything related to Bitcoin, you contribute to the development of a more just and sustainable world. This transition represents more than just switching to a new type of money. It's a fundamental shift towards a financial paradigm that values truth above all else. In Bitcoin, the cost of trying to cheat the system always far exceeds the cost of playing by the rules, which creates a base layer of truth for all interhuman activities, but it does not require you to act. It does require you to act, sorry. All of the responsibility is yours and yours only. You must decide how to interact with the Bitcoin network and to which extent you trust the individuals and companies involved. Whether you entrust a custodian to hold your Satoshis for you, keep them on a hardware device, or run a node to verify the incoming transactions is entirely up to you. Bitcoin management is not a one size fits all proposition. You must decide what works best for you. Most people aren't accustomed to this level of personal responsibility. People are used to trusting third parties for practically all forms of ownership, which is one of the causes of fiat systemic rot. The urge for there to be a free lunch undermines everything. Fiat currencies are credit. They are claims on goods that don't exist. The world has more than $300 trillion of debt, and the only way the fiat system can ease the burden of that debt is to debase the value of money, creating even more debt in the process. 1 trillion $1 bills laid end to end would stretch about a large number of miles further than the distance between the Earth and the Sun. The only way to end the destruction is to stop feeding the beast. Every time you use a fiat currency, you're stealing from your kids. You reinforce the institution that caused the problem. Every time you use Bitcoin instead, you remove the value of that transaction from these parasitic institutions and simultaneously fertilize the new system. Bitcoin is still just a footnote compared to the enormous fiat economy. but its minuscule size means that the opportunities it presents are unimaginably massive. We are so early it hurts. Clown World is a byproduct of people not taking responsibility. You achieve the inverse of Clown World through self reflection and debugging your mental software. Taking responsibility of your actions is the only thing that can make the whole damn circus disappear on a personal level and a societal one. Become the anti clown, become Bitcoin. Excelsior. For more on the topic, read The Price of Tomorrow. I have read this book a couple of years ago. I will recommend reading the book. Ah, okay. We still have 3 pages to go. I'll take a pause here. I've asked you guys to wait patiently. Okay, Faisal has posted a message. I'll take a pause here, guys. Thank you for being so patient. Even if you're not listening, I appreciate it. Hey, hey, hi, Manish. How are you doing? I just saw. Okay, what I'll do is I'll read this 3 pages post phase. The more you give yourself to Bitcoin, the more of itself it gives back to you, literally and metaphorically. After quitting my fiat job and deciding to devote my life to education, my family and I moved to our holiday home in Spain. A few weeks after we arrived, Jeff Booth and his family visited us for dinner. I greatly admired Jeff as having him over for dinner was just as much surprise as an honor. At some point during the evening, he asked me what my plans for the future were. I shrugged and said, selling books and merch, I guess. Jeff looked at me right in the eye and replied, you're not a t-shirt salesman, suggesting I should aim for higher goals. About a year and a dozen conferences later, I met Luke through Consensus Network, the publishing house I was collaborating with at the time. We decided to start a podcast together, and on Infinity Day 2020, Freedom Footprint Show was born. Earlier later, we decided to go completely independent, and now, a year after that, we've written a book together and rebranded the show to the Bitcoin Infinity Show. The ideas in this book are based on conversations during the Freedom Footprint years. Luke and I discuss tactics and ethics almost every day and often ask ourselves why we do what we do. The main reason is simple. We want to build relationships with other Bitcoiners. Sure, having a ton of subscribers is nice, but we are not in this for attention. We want to live the meme and experience hyper Bitcoinization from a front row seat among friends. Since we almost always have the same opinion about practically everything, we've decided to expand our collaboration beyond the pod, which is why this book is now a joint venture rather than a solo effort. Our mind meld is almost scary sometimes, despite our somewhat different but highly compatible skill sets and personality traits. I am a scatterbrained idea machine. Luke is diligent and organized. Every now and then in life, you find people you absolutely love working with. I've experienced such matches just a handful of times. With Luke, the difference is that I now work on stuff I absolutely love doing, which was not necessarily the case back in my fiat career. This book is a byproduct of that enthusiastic workaholics, not so anonymous relationship. After about 100 podcast episodes, I knew I had another Bitcoin book in me. And one fine day, the material just started pouring out. Because of Luke, the texts are now not just random ideas piled onto one another, which is more or less accurate for my previous works. Instead, there now exists a coherent book with a story structure and 12 strong chapters that can be read as standalone articles if necessary. Without Luke, that would not be the case. I'm very proud of what we've managed to squeeze out of our psyches and keyboards together. The surreal doesn't end is a phrase Luke and I often use to describe the feeling we get when we end up in situations where we get to hang out with our Bitcoiner friends and idols and form new bonds in idyllic parts of the world. Neither of us intends to stop attending Bitcoin events anytime soon. On the contrary, we look forward to getting around as much as possible and befriending as many of you guys as possible. The opportunities in this community are as endless as the rabbit hole is bottomless. I hope you've enjoyed reading this book as much as we have enjoyed writing it. I can't wait to dissect the ideas in it with each and every one of you, online or in person. Your fellow pile of sats, Knut Svanholm, July 24, a one horse town in Sweden. Yep, yep, yep. If you've been patient enough to just hang out with me, I'll just give a quick shout out to Nut and Luke. Nut also joined us in the introductory session. We had a good interaction with him. He was open to questions. He hung out with us far longer than we had in mind or he had originally in mind and promised us, but he was kind enough to just spend more time with us, give us a lot of energy, a lot of insights, a lot of his experiences. So yeah, I think what just summarizing this book in a nutshell is that Bitcoin community for me has been the reason I'm into Bitcoin. It's not because of my law degree, it's not because of my curiosity. Sometimes I think it's because of them pushing me to just test my waters, test my patience, test my skills, test my things, and what else could I be doing? It's like this asking questions like, what more could I be doing? What could I be doing better? How they can help me? What you think? What I think Bitcoin ecosystem needs. So if you're new to Bitcoin, if you're old to Bitcoin, if you're still listening to me, I will encourage you to do that more with people. As you meet more Bitcoiners, you'll realize everybody, for some reason, is yeah, collaborative. You will meet weird people as well, but I think even weirdos, you will never regret meeting them. Or at least I've been lucky enough to meet such people.